Imagine standing before a judge over a simple mistake, and feeling as if the whole world just slid onto your shoulders. The municipal courtroom hums with low voices and the soft clatter of pens. Fluorescent lights buzz, a tired halo over routine. Judge Caprio flips through a thin file, reading glasses halfway down his nose. Across from him stands Carolyn Mitchell, 58, neat cardigan, hospital badge still clipped to her pocket like an afterthought. Her eyes carry the grainy fatigue of night shifts, her hands are scrubbed clean, knuckles chapped. "Ms. Mitchell," Caprio says, voice warm but steady, citation for parking in a restricted zone outside Providence City Hospital. $85. Do you have anything you'd like to tell the court? She draws a breath. Yes, Your Honor. I left the car because there was a code in pediatrics. A baby couldn't breathe. I ran inside. A cough echoes from the back row, then silence. Caprio glances at the record. Were you on duty at the time? No, sir. I was on my way home. A nurse on the floor called, short staffing. I live 12 minutes away if the lights favor me. She manages a quick, apologetic smile that doesn't reach her eyes. I wasn't thinking about the sign. I was thinking about air going in and out of a child's lungs. The judge turns a page. A typed note from the parking inspector sits on top, flat and indifferent. It says here you routinely use that area because of your position at the hospital. Carolyn shakes her head. I don't. One time. The night of the call. He studies her a beat longer. In the gallery, a few faces tilt, recognition passing between neighbors. Someone whispers, "She took care of my wife after surgery," and lets the words fade. Caprio keeps his tone even. The law is the law. Signs are there for a reason, hydrants, emergency access, all of it. I understand, she says softly. I teach new nurses the same thing. But when the phone rang, there wasn't time to weigh the sign against a baby turning blue. He closes the file. The room seems to tighten around the hinge of a decision. Ms. Mitchell, the court can't run on feelings. I have to follow the statute, even when it stings. He lifts the citation, pen poised. I am obligated to impose The doors at the rear open with a polite click. A man in a City Seal lapel pin steps in, trying to look invisible and failing. He carries a slim envelope as if it were fragile glass. Your Honor, he says, catching the judge's eye. Thomas Green, Office of the Mayor. May I be heard, briefly? A ripple moves through the benches. Caprio sets the pen down, patience returning to his features like an old habit. Mr. Green, this is a traffic docket. Briefly will have to mean exactly that. Thomas nods, crosses to the lectern, and rests the envelope there without opening it. With respect, sir, I recognize Ms. Mitchell. Before you rule, there is context the file doesn't carry. He turns slightly, addressing the room without grandstanding. Last month, during a staffing shortage, a child came into the ER in respiratory failure. Ms. Mitchell wasn't scheduled. She came anyway. Caprio's brow lifts. Mr. Green, point of relevance. Thomas clears his throat, careful, as if each word has weight. The child survived. The family is known to our office. The gallery stills. Carolyn's gaze drops to her folded hands. She looks less like a defendant than someone caught under a sudden spotlight. Caprio laces his fingers. This court will hear facts, not favors. Understood, Thomas says. But the fact is, the child was the mayor's grandchild. The buzzing lights seem louder for a heartbeat. No one speaks. Caprio's expression doesn't change, but he reaches for the file again, slower this time, as if listening for something the paperwork forgot to say. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Every story has a beginning, but sometimes what looks like a parking ticket is the shadow cast by someone's finest hour. Thomas Green doesn't swagger, he approaches the lectern like a man delivering a difficult truth. The envelope stays shut. His voice is low enough that people need to lean in. Your Honor, I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here because I watched the footage from the hospital security feed. It shows Ms. Mitchell pulling to the curb, hazard lights on, door not even fully closed, and then, she runs. No hesitation. Straight to triage. He turns slightly toward Carolyn without turning it into a performance. That same night our emergency staffing was down by half. Budget cuts. Flu wave. 2 nurses covering 4 bays. A pediatric resident alone with a child whose chest was barely rising. He swallows. Ms. Mitchell had already worked 14 hours. She came back on her own. Caprio's face remains neutral, the kind of calm that steadies a room. Mr. Green, Providence has many citizens who do quiet good. Why bring this to my bench? Thomas glances to the envelope, then away. Because quiet good nearly became public punishment. And because the child she helped lives at the center of a very visible family. He meets the judge's eyes. It was the mayor's granddaughter. But this isn't a favor call. It's a matter of record. A stir goes through the gallery, then settles as quickly as it rose. Carolyn studies the wood grain of the defense table, embarrassed by the attention. Please, she says softly, don't make this about anyone's title. The baby didn't have one. Understood, Thomas replies. The point is what she did, not who benefited. He finally slides the envelope forward. Time stamps. Nurse logs. The ER incident report. You'll see the parking time, 4 minutes and 32 seconds before the child stabilized. Caprio accepts the materials, skimming with the efficiency of long practice. His thumb pauses on a notation, code blue, initiated by C. Mitchell, off duty. He looks up. Ms. Mitchell, did you notify anyone about parking in the restricted area? I didn't, sir. By the time I thought to move the car, the ventilator was on and the crisis had passed. I went back out, ticket was already under the wiper. She exhales, a measured breath that sounds like years of shift work. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking not to be punished for choosing a child over a sign. A man in the 3rd row, Union jacket, hospital patch, nods once, hard. Someone else murmurs, she trained my daughter, and goes quiet. Caprio closes the folder. Mr. Green, the court appreciates context. It cannot be steered by influence. I know, Thomas says. That's why I came myself and not with a statement. Influence whispers. Records speak. The judge taps the file with one fingertip, a soft metronome of thought. Procedure still binds this bench. The ordinance exists for hydrants, ambulances, fire lines. We don't rewrite it in moments of sentiment. He turns back to Carolyn. His tone changes, not softer, exactly, but closer. What you describe is duty, not drama. Duty deserves clarity. Before I rule, I will verify the inspector's report, the time stamps, the plate match, and the video. If the system erred, we will correct the system first and the citation second. Carolyn lifts her eyes for the first time since the revelation. They're wet but steady. That's all I wanted, Your Honor. Not a handout, just daylight. Caprio nods to the clerk. Subpoena the original ticket file, the body cam if any, and the hospital security feed referenced here. We reconvene at 9 tomorrow. He addresses the room, voice carrying to the last bench. This is not a courtroom for favors. It is a courtroom for facts. Today we heard more of them than the citation cared to tell. The gavel doesn't fall. He simply rises, signaling recess. As people stand, Thomas places a hand over the still-sealed envelope, then slides it back to Carolyn. You don't need a spokesman, he says quietly. You needed witnesses. She nods, almost shy, and tucks the envelope into her bag like a fragile photograph. The door opens to the hallway's colder air. Behind her, the judge is already reviewing the ordinance line by line, as if law itself should be reminded whom it is meant to serve. The loudest injustices rarely begin with crime, they begin with a mistake someone decided not to forgive. The next morning, the courtroom feels different. Fewer people speak, as if respect itself has grown thicker in the air. Judge Caprio sits with a stack of new documents spread before him, inspection logs, timestamps, the hospital's internal report. His glasses rest on the table. He doesn't need them to see what's wrong. He raises the first page. According to this citation, Ms. Mitchell's violation occurred at 7:42 p.m. on April 16. He pauses. But the emergency call to the hospital went out at 8:10 p.m. The ticket was written 30 minutes before she even parked. A ripple moves through the gallery. The clerk blinks. Caprio's voice stays calm, but it's a colder calm now. So the citation existed before the alleged offense. That's ambitious policing. The parking inspector, summoned that morning, stands stiffly by the witness rail. Sir, it must be a clerical error. The system preloads some data when we log daily patrols. Caprio tilts his head. And this preload just happens to find the same nurse who saved a child's life later that evening? No answer. Thomas Green sits in the back, silent, watching. Carolyn keeps her hands clasped, her knuckles pale. Caprio sets the paper down. Show me the camera feed from the hospital entrance. The clerk connects the screen. Grainy footage fills the monitor, a dark sedan pulls up, hazard lights flash, a woman runs across the frame, white shoes striking pavement. Time stamp, 8:11 and 22 seconds p.m. He turns to the inspector. That look like fiction to you? The man hesitates. No, Your Honor. Good, Caprio says quietly. Because fiction doesn't cost people their dignity. Bureaucracy does. The gallery exhales as if they've been holding their breath for minutes. Caprio continues, voice deliberate, this court cannot find someone for a crime that occurred only in a database. The record shows a misread license plate, one digit off from another car. That driver, by the way, paid his ticket last week. Ms. Mitchell's name should never have entered this system. He leans back, weary but firm. When the machine of law makes an error, our job is not to defend it, it's to stop it. Carolyn's eyes glisten. So, it's over. Legally, yes, Caprio replies. Morally, it's only beginning. He turns to the room. How many more names sit in these files because nobody had time to check a number? How many honest citizens walk away believing justice is just another word for luck? Nobody answers. The silence is its own confession. Caprio closes the folder. Ms. Mitchell, you are cleared of all charges. But I owe you an apology, not as a judge, as a citizen. We failed to match our laws to our values. For a moment, the courtroom stands still. Then quiet applause breaks, unprompted, respectful. Thomas steps forward, almost reluctant. Your Honor, there's something else. He places a new document on the bench, a copy of the original enforcement order, signed not by the inspector, but by a senior city administrator. Caprio frowns. This signature doesn't belong on a traffic citation. Thomas nods. Exactly. That's why I looked twice. The judge studies the name, recognition dawning slowly. A hint of political weight hangs in the air. He says nothing for several seconds. Then, softly, bring me the administrative records. Every one of them. Carolyn watches him, uncertain, but the calm in his face tells her she's no longer the one on trial. And as the gavel finally falls, the sound is not an ending, it's the start of something much larger than a ticket. Some people come to court to prove their innocence. But sometimes, the truth hurts far more than any verdict. The courtroom feels heavier now, like the air itself has learned what corruption smells like. Judge Caprio adjusts his glasses, ready to close the case and let Carolyn Mitchell finally breathe again. His gavel hovers above the desk when Thomas Green clears his throat. Your Honor, before you finalize anything, there's something I need to show you. The room shifts, restless. Thomas holds a thin folder close to his chest, his fingers trembling just slightly. Caprio gestures for him to approach. Make it brief, Mr. Green. Thomas nods, but his voice shakes with urgency. Sir, while reviewing the enforcement files, I found something odd. The report doesn't only bear the inspector's signature. There's another one, authorizing special oversight of parking zones around the hospital. That signature doesn't belong to any inspector. Caprio takes the folder, flips through the papers, and stops. His brow furrows. The signature is unmistakable. David Holmes, he murmurs. Deputy Mayor of Finance. He looks up sharply. The same Holmes who manages city contracts and parking enforcement partnerships. Thomas nods. Exactly. Caprio's tone lowers, like steel dragged across stone. Are you suggesting this wasn't a mistake, that these citations are being manipulated? I'm saying, Thomas replies, steadying himself, that it looks like the fines are being issued for profit, not law. The crowd ripples with whispers. Phones lift discreetly. Carolyn sits frozen, her confusion pure and visible. So, she whispers, barely audible. They didn't even see me that night. Thomas glances her way. No, ma'am. You were a name on a list, one that helped them meet a monthly quota. Caprio closes the folder slowly, the sound of paper soft but final. A quota built on punishing the decent. He stands, towering yet calm, the weight of years behind his words. Mr. Green, do you realize what this means? Thomas nods grimly. Yes, sir. It means the city's been selling guilt. A long silence follows. The walls themselves seem to lean in. Caprio finally speaks, voice low but cutting through the quiet. We began with a parking ticket. We may have stumbled into the architecture of corruption. He looks toward Carolyn, whose shoulders shake from a mix of relief and disbelief. You were never the target, Ms. Mitchell. You were the evidence. She stares at him, tears glinting. Evidence of what, sir? That good people still exist in a broken system, he says gently. The judge straightens, his expression unreadable now. This hearing is suspended until further notice. Effective immediately. A murmur rushes through the crowd, no one dares to move, yet everyone feels the ground shift beneath them. Then, just as the bailiff moves to clear the room, the courtroom doors creak open. The sound slices through the tension like a blade. A tall man in a dark suit steps in, posture crisp, confidence bordering on arrogance. His polished shoes echo on the tile as he approaches. Thomas pales. That's him, he whispers. Caprio doesn't blink. Mr. Holmes, he says quietly. How convenient of you to appear. We were just discussing your signature. Holmes offers a faint, practiced smile. And I was just hearing about your enthusiasm, Judge. Caprio studies him, no anger, only intent. Then perhaps you'll help us understand why the truth in this courtroom costs more than the fine itself. Holmes leans on the rail, voice smooth as glass. Because, Your Honor, in this city, truth has always been expensive. The judge's hand freezes midair, the gavel hovering once more, but this time, it doesn't fall. Not yet. When a man meant to serve the public starts playing God, truth becomes a dangerous thing. The room is charged, electric and brittle. David Holmes stands near the bench as if it belongs to him. His suit gleams under the lights, a kind of armor made of confidence and money. Judge Caprio doesn't move, but the silence around him does. It thickens, tightens. Mr. Holmes, Caprio begins evenly, you're here without counsel. Holmes smiles faintly. I don't need one, Your Honor. I'm not on trial. That remains to be seen. Caprio folds his hands. Would you like to explain why your signature appears on a file authorizing surveillance of parking near hospitals? Holmes shrugs, casual. Oversight. Routine checks. The city needs revenue. I made sure the process was efficient. Thomas Green can't hold back. Efficient, he says sharply. You turned nurses into numbers. Holmes' expression hardens. I turned inefficiency into profit, Mr. Green. That's leadership. The judge's voice drops, quiet but cutting. That's theft of trust. Holmes straightens his tie, meeting the judge's gaze with practiced calm. You've always loved your theatrics, Caprio. But this is an administrative issue, not a moral crusade. I advise you to close the file before you find yourself in deeper water. Deeper water? Caprio repeats. That's where truth tends to live. Thomas steps forward and places several printed emails on the desk. These came from the mayor's office archives, he says. Mr. Holmes personally approved batches of tickets, hand-picked, his words, to hit quarterly targets for a private parking contractor linked to his department. Caprio scans one message. The words chill even him: focus on hospital zones, staff rarely appeal. Low resistance, high yield. The room falls silent. Even Holmes' smirk falters. Would you like to deny this? Caprio asks. Holmes leans in, voice smooth but cracking slightly. You're reading private correspondence taken out of context. Nothing illegal. Carolyn finally speaks, her tone trembling but clear. I remember you. You were at the hospital that night, laughing with one of the officers. You said, some rules are for others. Holmes turns, startled. You're mistaken. No, she says quietly. I wish I were. The air in the courtroom turns heavy, raw with something close to outrage. Caprio stands, his gavel untouched. Mr. Holmes, I've heard enough. Whether or not you consider this illegal, I consider it indecent. And as long as I preside in this room, decency will not be dismissed as a technicality. Holmes folds his arms. This case is closed. Caprio's voice rises, not loud, but firm enough to silence the room. It will close when truth stops gasping for air. Thomas steps beside Carolyn, steadying her. Caprio looks at them both, then at the gallery, the faces leaning forward in quiet solidarity. I will forward this file to the state attorney's office, he announces. Every name, every signature, every false citation. Until then, this court remains open, and so does this woman's right to speak. Holmes glares, jaw tight. You don't understand, Judge. We run this city. Caprio meets his eyes without flinching. Then maybe it's time someone reminded you who it belongs to. The gavel finally strikes, once, sharp, echoing like a crack in old marble. Holmes turns and leaves without another word. The sound of his footsteps fades, but the echo of that single strike doesn't. It hangs there, like a promise. There are moments when justice stops being a profession, and becomes something painfully personal. 3 days later, the courtroom is nearly empty. No press, no crowd, just Judge Caprio, Thomas Green, and Carolyn Mitchell sitting quietly at the front. The sunlight through the high windows cuts across the bench, sharp and clean, like a verdict waiting to be spoken. Caprio clears his throat, reading from a folded letter. This arrived from the Department of Municipal Affairs, he says evenly. They respectfully request that I dismiss all related proceedings for exceeding my authority. He lowers the page. Apparently, integrity now requires permission. Thomas frowns. That's a warning, sir. Caprio nods. Yes. The kind that comes wrapped in official stationery. He sets the letter down beside the evidence file, then looks at Carolyn. They're hoping we'll be quiet. Carolyn's voice trembles. Are you going to stop? He studies her for a long moment. If I stop, this city will keep finding its conscience one ticket at a time. Thomas opens his briefcase, pulls out a document, the final piece. We traced the payments, he says. Holmes received commissions from the parking company through a shell fund disguised as a civic development grant. Every extra citation meant a bigger payout. Caprio's jaw tightens, but his voice remains calm. And that's how greed dresses itself in paperwork. Carolyn exhales, almost whispering. I spent my life saving people, Judge. I never thought saving myself would be the hardest part. He leans forward, eyes softening. You did more than save yourself. You exposed what the rest of us looked away from. Outside, faint noise rises, reporters shouting, camera shutters clicking. Someone leaked the story. Thomas glances toward the doors. It wasn't me, he says quickly. Caprio smiles faintly. Then maybe Providence itself decided the truth had waited long enough. He stands, takes the gavel in hand, then hesitates. They can threaten my position, my name, but they can't threaten what's right. He strikes the desk once. The sound is crisp, final. From this moment, he declares, this court stands for every citizen who's ever been fined for being decent. Carolyn rises slowly, tears glinting but proud. Thomas closes his folder, relief mixing with fear. As they leave, the empty courtroom hums with echo, of footsteps, of courage, of something shifting beneath the city's surface. Outside, microphones flash. Reporters call out, Judge Caprio, are you afraid of losing your seat? He stops at the door, looks straight ahead, and answers quietly. I'd rather lose my seat than my soul. And as he steps into the light, the world, finally, starts listening.